This is something I ponder every year when the Six Nations come round. 2 rest weeks. Is that too many? To me, it feels like one too many. I'll explain why in the video, but welcome back, and you can have your say, let me know in the comments section. Possibly a shorter video for this one. There's maybe not as much to say as some other things, but I wanted to cover it because, as I say, every year in the Six Nations, you play a couple of rounds, you have a rest week. You play one more round, you have another rest week. It always feels to me like it's just too much because from my point of view, it kills the momentum. You're just getting into things and then you have a break for a week. Then you're back, you have another set of great fixtures and then you break for another week. It seems to kill the momentum and the flow of the whole championship in my point of view. And I feel like it extends it by a week when it doesn't really need to. We saw it a little bit with the World Cup last year, that we had a lot of discussions around the pool stages and the way that they were formatted just meant the whole thing seemed like it dragged out a bit longer than it needs to. I don't necessarily think the Six Nations is in the same camp as that. I don't feel like the Six Nations feels like a drag by any stretch. If anything, we never really want it to end because it is quite a short and sharp competition. But I do think there are parallels just in terms of the overall flow of the Six Nations, in my opinion. And I think having the 2 rest weeks, I've always felt this, is just one too many. Not to mention the fact that it keeps the players away from their club duties for another week. Now that affects certain nations more than others. Ireland have great control over their players, so they're able to control when they return to club action anyway. The Premiership this year doesn't have any fixtures whatsoever, so the Premiership clubs aren't as affected. But there are others in the URC that will be affected, the French clubs that will be massively affected as well, with the top 14 carrying on as well. So I just wonder, would the Six Nations work better with just the 1 rest week? And obviously, I should say, there are some good things about the fact that we have a couple of rest weeks. Rest for the players and player welfare is probably the biggest ones. The fact that asking them to play back-to-back test matches takes a huge amount out of them in terms of the preparation, in terms of the physical toll. So I understand it from a player welfare point of view, but then I also look at the club game and I look at the fact that players often will play weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe months on end, week after week with a game. And I don't know, I just feel like, I don't know if there's commercial reasons for it as well, whether it works better having it over that longer stretch in terms of the commercial partners and the interest in the game and the conversations around it. Maybe it does drag it out an extra week in terms of the news cycle, in terms of keeping rugby in the headlines. But I'm not too sure. My general feel of working within the media is in the rest weeks, a lot of the time the interest drops off once again. You kind of have these spikes for the games and then it drops off. So as I say, let me know what you make of this. Do you agree with me? Is this something that you've often felt? Or maybe it's something you've never even considered. You think this is a storm in a teacup, it works perfectly well, and leave it alone. You can let me know in the comment section with that one. I suppose the final thing to say is, what would a solution be? If I'm suggesting this doesn't work, what's the solution? Well, for me, it would be just the 1 rest week. It would be you play the first 3 weekends, you then have a rest week, and then you can go again and you gear up for the final 2 run of fixtures, for that run-in to the deciding games in the championship, who's going to win it, who's going to finish bottom, all that sort of thing. I think the narrative would still flow quite nicely if you were to structure it that way. At the moment, every year it comes around to it, and as I say, it always just feels like too much for me. Too much rest. And I don't really know why we have it. Why are we all of a sudden going into another rest week? There could be something I'm missing here. Maybe there's something obvious about the reasons you have to do it. It's probably to do with what has been agreed amongst the various unions and players' unions and the squads and all things like that. For me, in an ideal world, without having to deal with any of the admin and red tape around these sorts of decisions, 1 rest week in a Six Nations should be better. There's too much rest in the tournament. We can cut it down by a week. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, don't forget, like the video. That just gives it a boost, gets it to as many people on YouTube as possible so we can grow the channel. And also, subscribe to the channel as well to make sure you do not miss anything. I said it would be a slightly shorter one. There's probably not too much more I can say on this, but do let me know your views. I look forward to reading them, and I'll see you in the next one.